For today's fashion shoot, we are celebrating Halloween. Our concept is inspired by the original Beetlejuice. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. Halloween is a great time for creative shoots because people are dressing up and they have costumes and they're playing characters. And every year I like to do a Halloween shoot, but I tend to do it with a little bit of a fashion twist. So in other words, rather than having my subject go out and buy a costume and try to recreate the look of a character in my favorite scary movie, instead what I do is I take references from those favorite films or those favorite characters and I try to interpret it with a modern twist, a little bit more of a couture or fashion look. And that's exactly what we're doing today. So today's look is inspired by the original Beetlejuice. I also wanted to do this because I would be rather timely considering there has been a Beetlejuice 2 that has come out and been celebrated recently. So in order to do this, I had a couple choices. I could go get the costume online and try to recreate the exact look of Lydia. And by the way, this look is from the wedding scene in Beetlejuice. So I could recreate the look, but that's not what I wanted to do. So instead what I did is I showed my fashion stylist the scene in the movie and I said, we don't need to recreate this, but can you give me a look, a red gown, a red veil, something that when the viewer sees it, they'll know exactly what I am referencing. So that's where we have this beautiful styling. And then I said the same thing to my hairstylist and my makeup artist. Let's look at the original reference, but add a modern fashion twist. So that is the look we have here. But then I wanted to consider how else could I bring Beetlejuice into the shot. Well, in the movie, when I watched that scene, I noticed a couple things. First of all, the background is a very unusual home with a lot of strong angles, and they used a lot of super saturated green and blue. So I knew that I wanted to bring that color palette into my final fashion shot. The background that you see here, I actually had on hand. I didn't order for this shoot. It is from a workshop that I do in conjunction with photographer Chris Knight. The Timeless workshops are workshops that explore concepts of the past. So we get inspiration from movies, from paintings, from pop artists, and then we interpret them through our style for a modern interpretation, very much like I'm doing in this image. The background that you see here was for Chris's interpretation of the film from 1920s, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. All right, well, we had this background sitting around, so I said, let me use it again and bring it back to life. It already had some of the green that I wanted to interpret in the shot, plus it had those strong geometric angles. All right, so I have set the scene for success. Great hair, makeup, wardrobe, and background. In order to really sell this shot though, I want to create lighting with a little bit of mood, interest, and drama. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through each light, build them in one by one so you can see how they layer upon each other for the final result. Now to really sell the image and create impact, we're also going to do a little bit of color grading. Now before we get shooting, I want to talk a little bit about my camera and lens combo. I'm shooting with the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 50mm 1.2 lens. I chose this lens on purpose because I'm going to shoot wide open. I'm going to shoot at 1.2. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to create a fall off of focus, a narrow depth of field, so it might look like the subject is actually on this scene. If the background is behind her, and you can tell it's a custom printed background, I don't want it to look too fake. I want it to look like she's on location. So shooting at a really wide aperture is going to allow me to do that. For that reason, I'm also shooting with my camera set to face and eye tracking. So it's going to find the face, find the eye closest to camera, and help me shoot tack sharp images even at 1.2. All right, so I'm going to build in the lighting, and in the end, we are going to be using 5 different strobes and a variety of different modifiers as well as gels. So let's begin with our main light. The main light, I am using a Profoto Pro D3. So this is one of the newer Profoto strobes. And on it, I'm using a Westcott Optical Spot. This is one that I actually designed in conjunction with Westcott. And I love this modifier because it allows me to create tight areas of light. So for this shot, I've taken the optical spot and closed down the shutters to create a narrow slice of light down her body. This means I have a lot of control. That light is going to be hard, defined, narrow, and it won't hit the background. So we're going to begin with that first strobe. All right, so you can see that this is just creating that little beam of light on the subject, which I love. But of course, the entire scene is kind of just disappearing into shadow. That's on purpose because then I can build the lights in step by step, allowing me to create a little bit of depth. Now, by the way, this first light with the optical spot has the 150mm lens on it. This is what gives me a tight head and shoulders beauty light. It's a little bit more narrow beam of light. But our second strobe is another optical spot on the background, but I want more coverage. And so with the optical spot, I'm going to be using a 50mm lens. And to give us a little bit of atmosphere, I'm using a gobo, a go-between optic. This is a little cutout, and the shape we have chosen is a window. You can see on the background that there is actually a window in the shot. And so by using a window gobo, I can project the texture of light coming in through panes of window, which makes it look a little bit more realistic. So we're going to turn on that second strobe. And on that second strobe, not only is there an optical spot, 50mm lens, and the window gobo, but we have a blue gel in order to make it look a little bit creepier with some moonlight. All right, let's add that second light. I already love what this looks like, and if I had to use only 2 lights, I could probably process this in a way that would work, but I really love it because it's giving me a feeling of motivated lighting. It's a little bit more cinematic. It looks like she's in the space. And by the way, to give credit where credit's due, this is something that I saw Chris do in his original interpretation of this shot, but I'm always looking for something in a scene. Even if I'm actually on location and I'm building in studio strobes, I'm looking for something believable, so when I add the strobes in, I can make them look like it's coming from a lamp or a window or something pre-existing in the shot. All right, so 2 lights gets me a little bit of the way there, but I still think she's really blending in with the background. So the next 2 lights I'm going to add are intended to pop her out from the background and illuminate that background just a little bit. So as I mentioned before, one of the colors that I saw in the background that I liked was a really saturated green. We also have that saturated blue that I mentioned, but I want to introduce the scene to the shot. So my next 2 strobes have green gels. The first one is on the left-hand side. We have a large umbrella with diffusion, so a soft light source that's going to throw color everywhere. And on that's a green gel that'll act as a background light as well as a rim light. And then secondarily over on the right-hand side, I have a 1x4 foot strip softbox with a grid with a green gel. So in other words, left-hand side, I have a background light and a rim light, and on the right-hand side, I have mainly a rim and hair light. All right, so let's add those next 2 strobes to the scene. All right, with the addition of these next 2 strobes, bringing us to 4 total so far, you can see that we've illuminated the background and popped the subject out for a little bit of separation. And this is that saturated green that I saw in the clip from the film. All right, now, the only thing I think personally that's definitely missing is she's wearing the super saturated blood red dress that you see in the film, an interpretation of this. But you can't really see much of that red for 2 reasons. 1, most of her body's in shadow, so there's not enough illumination on it. And 2, when the green rim lights hit her, it kind of washes out some of that red. It kind of counteracts it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 5th and final strobe just to pop a little bit of light into the dress so I have some detail and color. We've chosen a beauty dish with a grid on really low power, and that's just going to bring back some detail. All right, so we're gonna add in our 5th and final light. Okay, so now you definitely can see that dress. I have the elements of lighting that I like, but I'm definitely going to color grade this, much like you would see in a film in cinematography. Meaning I'm going to go in and play around with the contrast, the color in the shadows, midtones, and highlights. And I'm going to tweak this so it feels a little bit moodier, where I have more control over the colors in the image. So let's pop over into Capture One, and I'm going to make those tweaks. Now, while I've been shooting, I've been using a Tether Tools tether cable as I'm shooting so that the images are coming in. Typically what I do is once I get the image pretty close to where I like it, I'll make those color grading tweaks, and then as I'm shooting, every shot that comes in will have those adjustments. But because I'm shooting raw, at any point, I can undo it, change it, make adjustments, or change my mind after the fact. Okay, so let's take a look at Capture One. Now, before I start messing around with the colors, I wanted to let you know that this is much more an art than a science, meaning I don't have an exact formula. I go in, I play around, I take a look for what's moving me closer to the mood I'm trying to achieve. So I want this to be moody. I want there to be blues and greens. I want that red to really pop. I want it to be dark blood red. Right now, I think it's a little desaturated, maybe a little orange. And I think I want her skin to be deathly pale. So those are some of the things that I want to achieve. So typically where I begin with my color grading is I want to go into my white balance, and I play around with white balance and tint to begin with. I think making the image a little bit cooler is going to make those blues pop a little bit in the background and also pale out her skin. Now, I typically, in most images, add a little bit of contrast. And so just to show you where that got me so far, cool down the skin, pop the image a little bit. Next up, pretty much every image that I shoot for my style, add a little bit of clarity. I think it adds a little bit more detail to the shot. But then a majority of my color grading is going to be done in two places. I'm going to play around in the color editor and color balance. Now, if you want to see a little bit more about how I approach color grading, I have a monthly membership platform. You can go to learnwithlindsay.com. You're going to go to Learn Plus. And in fact, I have a couple holiday themes. I have Halloween episodes, I have Valentine's, all different sorts of theme. And in those, I shoot a variety of different concepts where you have full behind the scenes of my lighting, my color grading, and more. And so if you want to learn more about how I process an image, you can check it out because I have hundreds of setups already in my subscription. Okay, so popping back over here, I think the first thing I might want to do is play around with the red. Right now, I think the red is looking a little orange, so I might shift it towards magenta slightly. I want to saturate it and I want to darken it down. I've gone to the color editor, which allows me to target each color individually. So you can see I'm getting more of the red from the film. Next, I want to play with color balance. And this is where I said you can add color to the shadows, midtones, and highlights. I'm going to start moving colors around a little bit. So maybe I will cool down her skin tone just a bit. Maybe add a little bit of cyan, kind of like the moonlight coming in, hitting her face. Then I'm going to maybe play around in the shadows and see if I want to add more blue, perhaps more green. So here's if I add some more blue, maybe he's a little green to the shadows. And then I just start playing around with my exposure and contrast till I get something I like. But I think this is going to be a good starting place. So you can see I've incorporated both the blue and the green in the background, paled out her skin, but still have that saturated red. So I'm going to copy this adjustment up, apply it down, and now as I'm shooting, every image that comes in is going to have these adjustments. As you can see, there's a lot that has gone into this shoot. From the hair, the makeup, the wardrobe, to the background, to the lighting, it's all of it. And all of that is to lead me up and prepare me for actually getting the shot, which is where it really comes to life. And so in many of my shoots, it's a lot of preparation to lead up to spontaneity in the moment. All right, so with that, it's time to get the right emotion, mood. I'm gonna move her around. I'm not trying to reference any particular pose in the film, but instead just the overall feel of the shot. All right, let's do it. I love these shots because they definitely feel like Lydia from Beetlejuice, but I don't know, a little more creative, a little bit more modern, a little bit more fashion. And when I was photographing her, I kept on that 50mm 1.2 the entire time, but I moved in close, I got further away, and I shot at 1.2, so you just see the background melt away. I tried different angles, a little bit of movement, so I wasn't trying to replicate any one pose or any one moment, but to create something that had some dynamic energy to it. So if you want to see the gear used to make these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below, and of course, visit adorama.com. Now, if you want to see even more videos from me, you have so many different choices. You can go to learnwithlindsay.com to check out my tutorials, or you can like and subscribe because I have many more videos just like this one coming your way. See you next time, guys.